Halloween. Ghosts, ghouls, and things that go bump in the night. I hope you're having a wonderful, spooky Halloween. I know I am. I have found today a very exciting tale of a Halloween haunted house. So, why don't you sit back, relax, and tune in for Do You Have What It Takes?
Do you have what it takes?
The ad played on TV for over a month and appeared on signs all over town. Those 6 words, along with a date and address, were all it said. Underneath was a picture of a house that looked like Dracula's dream home. The ads had simply appeared out of nowhere. No one had seen the signs go up, and the ads would just show up on TV, sometimes right in the middle of programs. Ostensibly, it was advertising a haunted house that, according to the name and address, was opening just outside of town that Halloween. The adults were unnerved and wanted nothing to do with it, so naturally, every kid, including me, wanted to go. I was 13 at the time and considered myself fearless, so long as there wasn't a spider in my room. There wasn't a haunted house in the world that could scare me. My best friend Matt agreed with me. Matt had seen every scary movie known to man, or at least every scary movie his parents would let him watch, and considered himself an expert on the macabre. We were determined to go to this haunted house. We weren't alone. Matt's 12-year-old sister Julie wasn't going to let us go anywhere without her. While her brother preferred movies, she'd read every book on the paranormal, fictional or non-fictional, that she could get her hands on. Like Matt, she considered herself a paranormal expert, and she wanted in that haunted house as badly as we did. Our parents, unfortunately, didn't share our enthusiasm. Again, they didn't like how the ads for the haunted house had appeared out of nowhere, and liked the idea of us going there even less. When we first asked my mom to take us, she'd made a face like she'd sucked on a fresh lemon. First of all, why do you want to go there anyway? She'd been working on her computer while we talked to her, and kept typing as she talked to us. Being scared by people in costumes doesn't sound that fun to me. Please, Mom, I begged, even getting on my knees to show how much I wanted it. I just want to see what it's like. It opens this weekend, so I can stay out late. Plus, I'll pay for it with my own allowance. You don't even have to go in. You can just drop us off and pick us up. She looked up from her computer and sighed. I can tell how badly you want to go. All right, if you can find an adult to take you, you may go. Can't you take us? Matt asked. Sorry, kids, but I have to work that night. Taylor, why don't you see if your father can take you? No can do, my dad called from the kitchen where he'd been washing the dishes and listening to us talk. I've got a business dinner with my boss. Looks like we'll have to ask my mom, Julie told us. After visiting practically every adult we knew, we finally got Matt's older cousin Opal, who was visiting from college, to agree to take us. That Halloween, I was pumped. Halloween had fallen on a Friday that year, so Matt, Julie, and I raced each other home from school. Opal was supposed to drive us there at 6, but I was so excited that I put my costume on the second I got home from school. I was dressed as a vampire and kept doing fake spooky laughs in the mirror. I inhaled a PB&J and waited around for Opal. The first trick-or-treaters were making their way through the neighborhood when I heard a car honk. I practically flew out the front door, barely remembering to lock it. I ran to Opal's blue sedan and jumped into the back seat. Matt was sitting next to me and dressed like a mad scientist. Julie was in the front seat, dressed like a zebra. Opal wasn't wearing a costume, but In my opinion, she was scary enough without it. According to Matt, she'd been told by her parents before she went to college not to get a tattoo, a piercing, dye her hair, or do drugs. So naturally, she had a fake diamond in the right side of her nose, turquoise hair, and wore a black tank top so she could show off the monarch butterfly etched into her right bicep. She looked bored, as if driving 3 kids around on Halloween was the last thing she wanted to do. I didn't really know what to expect of the haunted house, but I was confident that we could handle anything it had to offer. Still, my confidence wavered when I actually saw the place. The ads hadn't done it justice. It was at least 3 stories tall, and looked like it had once been nice, but had fallen to utter disrepair. Every window was broken or streaked with grime. Termites had given the woodwork a makeover, and the house itself sat in the middle of a tangled mess of vegetation that might have once been a garden. A low, crumbling brick wall surrounded the place, with a tall black metal gate keeping us from entering. Opal was suddenly interested and parked the car. Matt, grinning from ear to ear, leapt from his seat. Julie and I, however, shared an anxious glance. I'd been to a lot of haunted houses, but this one felt different. I couldn't explain it, but something was telling me that we shouldn't go in there. Still, I found myself unbuckling my seatbelt and following Matt. We'd begged our parents to allow us to come here. I might as well see the place before I decided it was bad news. The 4 of us walked up to the front gate. I looked around for a ticket booth and became unsettled when I didn't see one. Didn't most places like this charge admission? Hey, cool! I turned to see Matt pointing at a sign on the gate. It was a piece of paper someone had written on that had been carefully taped to the door. It read, "Free entry, tonight only. Do you have what it takes?" The last part of the sign was in all caps, as if the question was of dire importance. I felt my chest puff out. I was being ridiculous. I was the bravest kid I knew. I shouldn't be scared away by a little haunted house. I walked up to the gate and pushed it. It was lighter than I thought it would be, and it fell open with a clang. "Let's go!" I started to march ahead, my excitement reignited. Matt followed my lead and came to my side. Opal smiled, and following us, kept a more leisurely pace. The only one who looked uneasy was Julie. She was holding the tail of her zebra costume in both hands and looking around anxiously. We walked up to the front door, with the porch groaning underneath us. I knocked on the door, and it fell open, just like the gate. I looked around. This was feeling weirder all the time. If this was a haunted house attraction, shouldn't there be ushers or something like that around? Shouldn't there be other kids coming to see it? I found out later that we were, in fact, the only kids who were brave, or stupid enough, to go to the haunted house. Most of them had gone trick-or-treating, or stayed home and watched Halloween specials. I really wish we had done the same. Matt was the first one to step inside the house. Opal took a picture with the flash on. I groaned. She'd blinded me for a second. "Sorry," she shrugged at me, "but the pictures won't come out if I turn it off." Julie still wasn't saying anything. She looked at me and I moved in closer to her. We were both starting to feel like something was very wrong. As a group, we started walking through the house. It was as bad as the outside. The wallpaper had peeled away. A family of spiders had obviously taken up residence, and there was so much dust that we all sneezed at least twice. Still, despite my uneasiness, there still wasn't anything actually scary in there. There wasn't even a cheesy jump scare. I was starting to think that things would be all right when I saw the room. It looked like a door to the basement, and had words scratched into the woodwork. "Do you have what it takes? Find out." "Neat," said Matt, grinning. "Finally, something scary." I started, trying to speak. My mouth had gone dry, and my stomach was suddenly churning. I think... dude, don't go down there. What? Matt smiled at me sweetly. It's the little vampire I'm afraid. Matt, please, Julie whispered. While I'd started to relax a little, the more we'd walked through the house, she'd gotten tenser. At one point, she'd been squeezing my arms so tight that my fingertips had started tingling. But Matt either didn't see how badly she was scared, or just didn't care. I'm going down there, he declared, and anyone who's brave enough is welcome to join me. You two wait up here if you don't want to go down, Opal told us, but I'm not missing this. She took her phone out of her pocket and started to take a video. Matt opened the door to reveal a dark, ridiculously long staircase. He started to descend, humming as he did so. Opal followed him. I looked at Julie. She seemed utterly terrified and was reaching to the pocket of her costume. I was about to ask her what she had when I heard something that stopped my heart. There was a voice coming from the basement. A voice that wasn't Matt's or Opal's. A voice that didn't sound human.
You are here.
It sounded huge. Neither Opal nor Matt spoke, but I heard a gasp and a cracking sound, as if Opal had dropped her phone.
So long,
the horrific voice continued.
Too long I wait for visitors. I send messages. No one comes. But you see messages. You have what it takes.
There was sound, like an enormous creature getting up after lying down for too long. Then the voice said something I'll never forget. You have what it takes to be my meal. Matt screamed. Opal screamed. Julie and I screamed. I tried to run for the front door, but Julie held me with both arms and had frozen in place. I tried to pry her arms off of me as I heard running feet on the staircase. Matt was still screaming, but the sound had changed. It didn't sound like he was screaming in fear anymore, but because of pain. Opal charged through the door, white as a sheet and screaming 5 words over and over again. It doesn't have a face! It doesn't have a face! Julie still wasn't moving, so I was forced to watch as a jet-black appendage, like a hand but very much not a hand, shot out from the basement, reaching towards me. Everything froze. Then, something white flew through the air, hitting the appendage. There was an unholy shriek, and the appendage shot back down the stairs as fast as it had emerged. I looked at the floor and saw white powder scattered everywhere. Salt. I looked at Julie in time to see her stick an empty salt shaker back into her pocket. Then she grabbed me and shoved me towards the door. That won't hold it for long. Run! She shoved me again, then grabbed my hand and started leading me to the front door. Opal was sobbing now. It doesn't have a face! The entire house started shaking. I felt like I was trapped in a maraca. The thing in the basement started shouting, and a series of thumping noises came from the staircase.
Come back!
I slammed into the front door and forced it open. Julie and I practically jumped off the front porch. I heard Opal still sobbing behind us, and turned in time to see the black appendage from before grab her around the waist. Her eyes went wider than I thought possible before she was yanked back. She grabbed the front door as she went, and accidentally pulled it shut. She screamed even louder than Matt. Julie and I raced for the gate. My lungs and muscles were burning, but I didn't care. I wanted out of there. I nearly shoved Julie through the gate and followed after her. We didn't get into Opal's car. We just kept running down the road. I don't know how long we ran, sobbing and trying to make sense of what we'd just seen, but somehow we ended up in front of Julie's house and collapsed on the porch. The police went to investigate the house. They found Opal's car, salt scattered across the floor. Julie explained to me when we talked later about how salt can ward off evil spirits. Opal's broken phone and enormous bloodstains were on the floor of the basement. No trespassing signs were put up around the property of the house. Even if our story, the true story, was a little hard to believe, it was clear that 2 people had been murdered down there, and that was enough to keep people away. For Julie and I, Halloween was ruined forever. I'd lost my best friend. She'd lost her brother and her cousin. We started spending every Halloween together in my basement, watching the most un-Halloween movies we could find. 7 years later, we still do that. I haven't seen the ads again, but Julie and I keep a lookout, because they never found the thing that killed Matt and Opal, and I need to make sure that no other kid feels like they need to prove that they have what it takes. And that is today's tale. Do you have what it takes to go to a haunted house? What other scary things have you been up to this Halloween season? Check out our Facebook page, the Haunted Horrorstorian Podcast, and our private Facebook group, Haunted Horrorstorians, Ghosts, Ghouls, and Things That Go Bump, and tell us all about how you're spending your holiday. You can also send me an email if you'd rather at hauntedhorrorstorian@gmail.com. Until next time, listeners, happy Halloween, stay spooky, and remember, sometimes it's more than just a story.